Hello, Hare Krishna. My name is Jvalamukhi, and this is series called The J Files, and number 3 is where we are right now. I don't know how many there will be. Let's see. This is my journal, my healing log, and I have titled it My Hoo Hoo and the Destiny of the Universe because it began with trying to heal um, issues that arose from the sexual abuse in the satanic cabal aspect of my life. Of course, I didn't have any recall of that till later, but the body remembers. And as you go into the cellular memories that are stored in the layers of consciousness, everything comes out pristine like a carefully folded piece of clothing in the bottom of a trunk. Anyhow, so I'm going to be reading and describing events that may trigger people. Well, probably will trigger people because they are directly talking about the rituals that I experienced and the details. But it's not just the physical, okay, I was in such and such place with these people and these things happened. It's also the multi-dimensional experience that I had um, in putting the whole thing together. So I've written it in a way where the audience can enter into that experience in real time and come out the other side of it, hopefully with the positive aspect of it, which is self-realization. I don't want to just scare everybody with horror stories. That's not the intention here. There's plenty of those everywhere else. My intention with this series is to invite the reader into um, the victory of Lord Chaitanya's mission. And how is that? Because really, in every incarnation, the Lord descends to deliver the fallen conditioned souls and kill the demons. And in Kali Yuga, he appears as Lord Chaitanya, and that killing of the demons is of killing the demonic mentality of the souls here. And how do you do that when life after life a soul has chosen ignorance and envy? Well, certain situations are put together expertly by the Lord's hand, and when when you come to accountability for those, then the backstory can be shown, and peace can be had, and resolution is there, more devotion, waking up from the coverings of the material energy, all of that. So also, I thought I need to make an explanation of what is trauma-based mind control, because the people who engage in satanic ritual abuse aren't just, you know, um, they're not just bad people. They're not just people who are walking around, with horns on their head and thinking about doing evil deeds. You have to understand that this is a multi-generational occurrence. It's the children of satanic ritual abuse families are brought into the ritual, even in some cases before they're born, through different practices. It's quite the science, and what I want people to understand is that people um, live in the soul lives in a physical body which responds to physical laws, and that includes the mind. So the mind can be hacked, it can be controlled when you know exactly how it works. And so the demons, because they're always thinking, how can I control and lord over and everything like that, they want to control your mind to make you do what they want. And their greatest juice is how can I separate this soul from God? How can I control them to do horrible things and own them? And it's just demon candy. And that happens multi-generationally. So they actually, it's this crazy thing where they actually think that they're doing you a favor, the Satanists, the worshipers of the dark, by hollowing you out or making you a vessel so that you can become powerful, because they don't really have any conception of God, right? So for them, God is power. And if they can give you, their child, more power, then they've done a good thing, right? Never mind that they raped and tortured you from the moment you were born, made you participate in hellish things, so you disassociated completely. The good news about you disassociating completely is that they can then install whatever program they want, make whatever altar they want, multiple personality, etc., call in all sorts of demonic beings that attach to the trauma that can be then triggered by touching the right point on your body in which they tortured you when you were 2 or 3, and on it goes. But anyways, my point is that it's a science, and it is very much used by all the world government officials. Um, Anybody who is of influence in the world, who's allowed to have a part on the world stage, has gone through this kind of training from birth up. They don't just let influencers be influencers um, without having a lead on them. And that's trauma-based mind control. So I needed to tell you that because I'm going to be reading some passages that include the participation of some near and dear people to me. They're not bad people, but they also are victims of multi-generational satanic ritual abuse, which you think, oh my God, that's so crazy and scary. But guess what? It's super normal. It's super normal. People don't realize just how normal it is. If you wanted to know why there are so many participants in this crazy time that we live in, like how are there just so many evil, weird, crazy, insane people? Well, that's been in the works for a really, really long time, centuries, really. And their churches, so-called their churches, their organizations are organized. They have the all the Masonic lodges, and everywhere you go. They even made one in Mayapur, India, right next to the Jagannath temple. I'm like, what is a Masonic lodge doing here? Well, it's very important that they have that there because they are training a whole new set of people and generation in their practices. And what are those practices? Trauma-based mind control by worshiping dark beings. It's religion in the mode of ignorance. Just another flavor of it. So, my mother, who is an amazing devotee, an amazing disciple of Srila Prabhupada, I love her so, so much. I called her yesterday to tell her that I was going to be making these videos. And I don't want any of you for even a second to think that this woman is bad. There's nothing bad about her. She is so beautiful as a soul. And at the same time, she was also brought in on these rituals and made to do things that she wouldn't want to do ever. I mean, so many of the devotees in our society were brought in on these rituals and may or may not have any recall, but their bodies show the symptoms of it, the sicknesses, the mental illnesses, the dysfunctions that show up, and they don't have any recall of it. It's sort of like a Manchurian Candidate where you just switch on and off and the other people push the buttons. So that is possible. The mind is a mechanism. It can be controlled, especially when there is a foundation for earlier on in life. So you can literally walk into a room, be triggered, switch into your altar, do whatever it is that they tell you to do because your program is on. Hellish things happen, and then they switch you back off or choke you out or whatever they do, and you have zilcho memory of it. And that's super scary. And unfortunately, that's just the way it is. So, all right. Now that long-winded explanation, I've also included on my website the songs that my mom wrote when we were growing up, the little Vaishnava songs. And if you'll bear with me, I'm not so great at technology, so I'm still trying to load those videos. However, you can find them on YouTube under Little Vaishnava. There's a little circle icon with a little cartoon, and all the beautiful songs that we grew up singing are there. So now I will open this document and begin reading the substance here of this journal. This is the prelude, an excerpt from the middle that I've put in the beginning to demonstrate just one of the events that go on in my crazy life. For what sin am I being thus punished? I asked the great lord of death, Yamaraj. His massive, handsome form was clad in burgundy and gold colors. The demigod reclined on an impressive golden throne, inlaid with precious gems, just a few feet from where I stood in my subtle, ethereal body. My physical 7-year-old body was back under the canal water, tied to the pole they had used to punish me for disobeying their orders, to stab and sacrifice my 6-year-old friend, who had told. Above the water, on the mosaic tiled floor of the indoor boat canal in the Fisher Mansion, my tormentors stood, sure that this treatment would convince me to do their bidding. Unfortunately, they miscalculated how long a little girl could hold her breath under the water. Both my parents stood above. I could see them from under the murky surface. My father had his hands raised in the air and was chanting and dancing with tears in his eyes as if this was the greatest sacrifice ever to God, and he was in some kind of bliss/pain at his offering of me, his daughter. My mother stood as usual, no expression on her blank face. She stood motionless, as if a statue in a crumpled cotton sari. She wasn't home. I loved her, and I wanted to save her somehow. I was 7. My lungs burned. I was numb with fear, but somehow calm and unfeeling at the same time. How many times before had I been this close to dying? This was my normal by the ripe old age of 7. I had the great good fortune, or you could say misfortune, to be born into a Rakshasa Vaishnava family. For those of you who don't know, a Vaishnava is a devotee of God who was also known as Vishnu, the maintainer and the creator of all that be. And a Rakshasa is a powerful class of humanoid species with a proclivity for eating human flesh, especially babies. They can assume both physical and only subtle bodies at will, which is their nature as they are interdimensional beings. Their race is well documented in the histories called the Puranas like Mahabharata and Ramayana. Though modern culture has trained over the centuries to think of them as fictitious, I can assure you they are not. They are oh so real. They happen to be running the world. Under the water, 4 very beautiful beings suddenly materialized around me as I felt all the air leaving my lungs. They urged me to come with them right now. It was urgent. I was reluctant. What will happen to my mother? How can I save my friend, my siblings? What will happen to them if I leave? I have to help. I can't just go with you. The beautiful watery-looking beings with flowing robes spoke without words in my head. You must come with us now. You will come back to your body soon, but you must come now. You will be all right. I felt my resolve leave and decided to go with them. I stopped fighting and I just died. I just slipped right out of my body and I thought to myself, this feels so wonderful. Why didn't I do this earlier? What an immense relief I suddenly felt, like I was lighter than air. Dying was so easy. The 4 beautiful beings swiftly escorted me through space and dimensions. My physical body lay back under the water, was quickly forgotten as I felt myself traveling at the velocity of the mind, places and images whizzing past me at warp speed. It was not at all uncomfortable or new to travel this way. It felt completely normal, really. And then the flashing scenes slowed to real time, and I saw myself above a familiar landscape dotted with the most perfect rounded trees and softly rolling hills. An incredibly gorgeous garden stretched as far as the eye could see. Colors of shimmering, self-effulgent pastels and glittery gold and silver emanated from the shrubs, flowers, and garden houses below. Without pausing, my 4 escorts flew me straight into the entrance of the largest building I have ever seen. It was seemingly without an end, its white marble-looking towers and turrets carved intricately. It glowed with its own soft effulgence. Swooping swiftly down, we entered the huge palatial hall. Taking me directly in front of the superintendent of death, my beautiful-looking guides deposited me there and just vanished. I found myself alone with this God in the vast hall. I could sense that the room was crowded and teeming with people, that there was so much noise around me, but I could not see or hear anyone at all, only sense their presence. In the calm silence, I could sense the din of many conversations, yet I had heard not a word. The outstanding feature of this unique hall was that there were no walls, only endless columns, and beautiful ones at that, with each one possessing its own carved designs. There I stood, a naked 7-year-old girl, unabashed and unafraid. You'd think under the circumstances I would have felt some intensity, but I did not. I was the witness, the self, pausing and reviewing the present drama called life. With his kind lotus-like eyes, Yamaraj regarded me. I knew him somehow, and he knew me, yet I could not ever remember meeting him. There he sat, offering me undivided attention, as if he had nothing else in existence to do but offer his time to me. He was impassive and yet full of compassion, feared but fair. His is the thankless task of meting out to all souls their karmic bill that comes due at the end of each life, of each new body the soul takes on. The balance of pious and evil deeds are weighed, and the individual's destiny is ascertained. The four directions act as witnesses in time. Nothing goes unseen. Nothing goes unpunished or unrewarded. Yet I was not dead, not really. What was I doing here? Therefore I asked, for what sin am I being thus punished? Neither of us used our mouths to talk, and his answer was even less than that. He smiled slightly with a wise, knowing look. Waving his giant, graceful hand, the hall vanished. I simultaneously viewed and experienced the unfolding scene that appeared. There I was, an old man, now with heavy chains around my neck that burned, being forcibly dragged out of my physical body that lay prostrate on a bed nearby. I could see still the large bedroom in the dimension of the living. Four gruesome and ferocious personalities laughed as they taunted and kicked, spitting on me and insulting me. My old man's mind was numb with terror. What was this? I had to figure a way out. My mind was racing as I thought of strategies. I was used to making deals in that lifetime. I was a top politician during World War II. Well, respected anyway. I was very intelligent, or so I thought. But now there was nothing for it. I fell to my knees and begged my captors for all I was worth. Spare me, I will do anything. But it was too late. Far, far, far too late. Laughing harder, they yanked their chains cruelly. Bound like a helpless animal dragged to slaughter, I saw a huge fiery pit, the very maw of hell itself yawning, threatening to devour me just ahead. The smell hit me first. Acrid, pure acid in a gaseous state. It was enough to sear the bones from your very soul. And judging by the screams below, it did just that. I could hear the sounds of hell, hissing, cracking, screaming moans, the satisfied laughter of the beings in charge of punishing sinful souls. But the most overwhelming aspect was the liquid cold ether of sheer and utter terror that numbed my utter being. Starting at my stomach, this terror swept through me in freezing waves of paralyzed panic. I was going to hell. There was absolutely no way out. It was over. I was over. I saw all of this simultaneously from the perspective of my little naked 7-year-old self. I knew that old politician was a former body of mine. I felt everything I saw. I saw the man, myself. I went through it all. I had now eyes and then eyes. As the eternal soul, Yamaraj was answering my inquiry by showing me my past body, my previous activities, and how it ended in my hellish destination. But that all changed. Out of the periphery of my eyes, the eyes of the old politician, I saw a golden glow. I looked up from my captors. This light was not at all like the yellow of hell's fire, but was brilliant yet extremely soothing. This golden light, I soon discovered, emanated from the body of what could only be described as God Himself. Flawless perfection, compassionate incarnate, His indescribably beautiful form stood between me and hell, blocking my descent. With my then eyes, I could not recognize Him, but with my now eyes, I knew exactly who stood before me. Bhagavan Sri Krishna Caitanya Mahaprabhu, the golden avatar, Krishna himself. God descended on earth to save all fallen souls with unprecedented mercy. What Hare Krishna Kid didn't know who he was? Of course, it was Lord Chaitanya. But back then, when I was an old man, a very intelligent, influential politician in World War II, I knew nothing. I stood in my burning chains, flanked by the fierce servants of Yamaraj, the Yamadutas, and just stared, dumbfounded. What would you do if you suddenly saw God under such circumstances? The one you'd spent your whole life denying existed. I knew nothing but this. He was standing between me and hell, and I threw myself down at his feet and groveled. Saliva would have been dripping out of my mouth if I had any. I did not pray. I had not words. I did not ask anything. I could not think. All I could do was throw myself towards his feet and stay there. The chains of the Yamadutas still choked my neck as they held me captive. I was their rightful charge. Imagine the sound of soft thunder in the clouds, deep and powerful, scary yet reassuring. This is the voice of God. He spoke without moving his exquisite lips. In a booming voice that pervaded time and space, our minds and hearts, he said, "This one is not destined for hell. Release him." And immediately the Yamadutas and their chains vanished, leaving me alone with the Lord of the universe. There we were, somewhere between lives, between hell and salvation. Suddenly I saw someone else standing to his right whom I had previously not noticed before. This person was also very beautiful, but was dark in color. Just as Lord Chaitanya's skin is the color of molten gold, the man standing next to him was so dark brown that he appeared almost bluish black. The startling contrast of his white teeth and eyes offset his broad forehead and handsome features. He wore golden earrings and a helmet on his head. Dressed in simple yet elegant silken garments, his broad chest and well-muscled arms and legs showed him to be a powerful warrior. I knew his name with my now knowingness. In disbelief, the whole gamut of what I was being shown blew both my then and my now mind. It was my beloved Srila Prabhupada, except he did not appear in the familiar and endearing form we all know him on this earthly plane. He appeared at the Lord's side in a celestial form. He had come for me. He had come for me. He had come for me. Smiling, the blessed Lord said inside my heart and mind, "My devotees are dearer to me than my very own life. Thus do I consider their prayers as orders on my head. With great pleasure do I, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, behave just like their menial servant out of affection for my pure devotee servants. When I was requested by my great devotee to deliver you, a most fallen wretch, I had to oblige. I am bound by the ties of his love. Therefore, even though you are destined to suffer in hellish conditions indefinitely due to your sins, because my devotee prayed to me for your salvation, be free." My mind reeled. How do I describe what I felt? What had just happened? I died. There is life after death. Who knew? There were these super scary guys dragging me to hell. I was so scared. Now I'm not. God is real. Hell is real. Karma is real. I just got saved. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. My tiny brain just flatlined. The gamut of all of this just blew my circuits completely. I was so awestruck that I forgot to be shy. How to explain my gratitude? The greatness of these two personalities would not sit in my little itty bitty brain, my blown mind. I simply lay face down at their feet, not daring to move or look up. They had just saved me from indescribable suffering. How could I say thank you? How could I ever repay them? How would it be possible to look upon them, knowing now my grievous errors in that previous life? I felt the weight of my ignorance and my sins very greatly. All I could do was remain prostrate at their feet. Again the Lord spoke in my heart and my mind. Hearing him, I stood up with folded hands, awaiting his instructions. This next part is a sutra, condensed meaning in a very short sentence that, when expanded, includes the entire teachings of all spiritual doctrines. The entire Bhagavad Purana, you could say, is encapsulated in this one sentence that the Lord gave me, and I meditate on it daily. The Lord said in my heart, transmute all of your experiences and carry none of them. He said to me this sentence. In that one sentence, he had just summed up an entire life's work of pain and transcendence, a life of suffering and of surrender, a lifetime of retribution and of forgiveness, a life that was to come, this life, my now life. I had unlimited questions and simultaneously none at all. I felt sinful and completely loved. God accepted me just as I was, a wretch of a politician who just caused great suffering in so many ways in the world. How was it possible that I deserved this mercy? Clearly, I had earned nothing. The credit was only due to Srila Prabhupada's devotion and his mercy upon me. Out of his unlimited kindness, knowing his master's heart, he prayed for me. There he sat in a humble building in Calcutta during the Second World War, bombs falling all around. He didn't run like everyone else, trying to save their lives. He simply sat, trusting his Lord to either kill or save him as he saw fit. I must have made the top 10 list of demons to pray for, because here I am. I owe my everything to Srila Prabhupada, who delivered me from hell and unto the lotus feet of Lord Gauranga, the golden-limbed Lord. Still standing before them both with all my might, I determined to do as the Lord instructed. I would transmute all my experiences and hold none of them. Except his smile knew what that meant, and I had no idea at all. Yamaraj had just revealed my past birth to me, and thus kindly answered my question. For what sin am I being thus punished? I was again back in the great hall with the Lord of Death. But this time we were not alone. Next to me stood another little naked girl, Shakuntala. She had just been killed. Her 6-year-old body lay back on the yacht, anchored in the Fisher Mansion boat canal, surrounded by all the well-dressed, affluent guests who had been invited for the party by members of their own kind, whose mission it was to infiltrate the Hare Krishnas. But they were never devotees. They were always demons, so-called human beings. Yamaraj said, "You can now return to your body." I replied, "No, please send me to hell. Instead, I can't bear to go back there. I will just die immediately again. What is the use? Better send me to hell than return to that body." He smiled. "It is your destiny. You must go back. You will have protection, though. You will not remember anything until you have help. Then you must carry out the Lord's orders." He smiled kindly at me. I swear I love Yamaraj. I consider him my dear friend and well-wisher. I think of him with great respect and softness. Indeed, he is one of the 12 great Mahajans, or great saintly personalities, spoken of in the scriptures. His business is to give pleasure to God by preaching his message, but he is so busy with his duties he rarely gets the chance. There are some great exceptions, though, well worth researching about, when he took his birth on the earth, seemingly due to a curse. But what was I to do? I just couldn't leave my friend Shakuntala there. Not after all that she had just been through. I had to save her somehow. She had to be able to come back too. She had to live, but she couldn't. She didn't have a body to come back to. They'd hacked it all to pieces as part of their dinner party. They had tried to get me to do it. That's how I ended up tied to the end of the metal pole and lowered into the water. I had refused. Even after they held my someone very dear to me upside down over the water, over the edge of the yacht, threatening to drop her if I did not comply, I still balked. Shakuntala lay, quote, prepared on the table, naked except for a large string of pearls double draped around her neck. It was my fault that she was there in the first place. She had confided in me back at the ashram school that they were touching her, and it felt yucky. Being Miss Goody Two-Shoes, teacher's pet, trying to do the right thing, I went to our teacher to get my friend some help. Our teacher was seething with fury. How dare she ever say anything? Didn't she know the consequences? Now we were both in trouble. We were going to be made an example of. If you've ever wondered how people can do such evil things, what came out of the so-called Swami's mouth, I will refer to him from here on out as reptile, for that is what he is. The following explains everything. He was dressed in a hooded black outfit. I almost didn't recognize him at first. He's the tricky one to see. He's not human, literally. Especially empowered, dressed in Vaishnava clothing, the short, diminutive Jewish man came over to me. With his close-set small eyes and large nose, he moved in towards me. In an artful aerobic feat of twisted perversion, he explained how things were. There is no good. There is no evil. There is only light. Those who see evil do not see the light. There is only the one. There is no duality. If you see evil, you are evil. You are her, and she is you. You are one. There is only one. She saw evil. She complained that people were touching her. She lied. She saw evil when there was none. There is evil in you, but you can fix this, Janavi, my birth name. You can kill the evil in yourself by killing the evil in her. You are one, the one. Her eyes saw evil. You can cut out the evil in you by cutting out the evil in her. Cut out her evil seeing eyes, and you will no longer see evil. You are the same. You can fix this, Janavi. Then he handed me the ceremonial knife. I don't know what happened next. All I knew was that Shakuntala was my friend, and now she'd just died because of me. The demons are always very expert to set the ritual killings up so that the child who is involved in it feels completely responsible for the death of their friend who is, the demons set you up so that you can't win. And in every way, you feel responsible for the death of the person you care for. And if they bring in a so-called disposable person, they will make sure that you spend time with that person so you become attached to them before you kill them, because then they can actually use the techniques and the methods in a way where you own it completely and take responsibility for what they did. There had to be a way to help her, but she had no physical body to go back to. It was all mutilated. Shakuntala burned with revenge, and I was burning with guilt, wanting desperately to rescue her somehow. So I invited her to come back into my body with me. Yamaraj sanctioned it. She accepted my invitation. It wasn't until I was 36 years old that I rediscovered our pact, but that's another story for another time. I was back in my body. I hurt. I was cold, freezing cold. My father was performing CPR on me. My mother was crying. I was dead. They had pulled my limp body out of the canal, realizing too late their bad estimation of timing. They hadn't meant to kill me by drowning. That was way too easy. No sacrifice nor fun in that. No, no, no. The demon, I will refer to as Beast, also dressed as a Vaishnava, had held me under for too long. The outside guests, dressed in their fancy black formal evening wear, surrounded me on the boat. They'd all been invited there by a member of their own organization of demons. He was a wealthy man who had apparently joined the Hare Krishnas. Now they watched as my father tried to revive me. Unfortunately, it worked. I sputtered and gasped for air, water coming out of my lungs. Beast slapped his thigh and laughed. See, Mragakshi, I told you. Nothing to worry about. Then he pulled his pants down, put his naked butt over my face, and passed stool into my mouth. Welcome back to life. Transmute all of your experiences and hold none of them. This indeed is my most sacred, difficult order from God I carry on my head, anchored in my heart by the ropes of gratitude and love for His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, and what he came to give this world, the Lord Himself. It was not my destiny to die that day. I would go back to this present body from the hall of death, but I would be protected. I would forget everything until I had help. 34 years later, my life was falling apart. I said a purify me prayer to God, Shri Radha Shama Sundar, in the temple, and then all hell broke loose. The lid of Pandora's box cracked open and started leaking. Sri Krishna and Srila Prabhupada sent me help. They sent me my teacher. Now I would remember. Now the question was, could I survive it?